Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's class, we are going to deal with part 3, diversity in living organism. Today's topic is need for classification. Let's begin our class. What is the importance of classification? Why do we do classification? But before moving ahead, you should know what is classification. Classification is nothing but grouping things into convenient categories based on observable characteristics. So these are the 3 points for the definition of classification. How do we do and what do we do? What do? We do grouping. Where do we do? In a categories. How do we do? By observing the characters. Now, what is the need of classification? Why we are supposed to do these classification? Because we have many organisms to study. Individually, if we try to study, we have millions of species, right? Individually, if we try to study millions of species, it is way too impossible to study all the organism without grouping them, without classifying them. So, classification helps us to group these organisms based on what? Based on similar characteristics. How do you get to know this similar characteristics? It is nothing but you observe the character of the particular organisms, right? Now, the another term in this is nothing but taxa. Taxa means group. The scientific term for grouping of organisms. See class, what is grouping of organism? We call it as classification. 3 points are there under classification. Grouping of organism into convenient categories and through observable characters, right? The scientific term, the one word if I'll ask you for the group of organism, we call it as taxa. So taxa means group, right? Singular one is taxon. Any level of grouping of organism based on certain easily observable characters. Same thing we wrote it for classification. Same thing is taxa. Taxa is nothing but grouping. Classification is nothing but grouping. The one scientific word if I want to give for grouping, that is nothing but your taxa. Right? Taxa can be at the different levels such as kingdom, phylum, class. So we have studied this. Keep, pot, clean, otherwise, family, get, sick. This is the mnemonic for this, and you have to remember K for kingdom, P for phylum, C for class, O for order, F for family, G for genus, and S for species. These are the 7 obligate categories or taxa. So what is the example of taxa? Taxa is what? Class, group. So kingdom is nothing but group. Phylum is nothing but group. Class is nothing but group. Order is nothing but group. These all are group of organisms. So we have given one word, that is taxa. So if the question is what is the need of classification, it is nothing but you have to write the number of species are more. It is impossible to study these many species without classification. So we have to do grouping. That grouping is nothing but taxa. What is the example of taxa? All these 7 obligate categories are example of taxa. Why? Because group of organisms are present in these 7 categories. You have to learn it in a sequence wise manner, hierarchical manner. You have to learn it. Kingdom is the highest unit of classification and species is the lowest unit of classification, right? So here you can see apart from these 7 taxas or obligate categories, we have Animalia, Chordata, Mammalia. So what all things come under these 7 categories, those also called as taxa. That's what is given in your textbook. But back in the mind, you have to understand class. These 7 categories, that is kingdom, phylum, class, order and species, these are categories. In your textbook, they have mentioned as taxa. So you call it as taxa. What is present inside this? We call it as taxa. Because what is present, that is also group. See, kingdom is a group of phylum, right? So it is a taxa, correct? Now under kingdom you have 5 kingdom classification. You will study in botany, biological classification. You have 5 kingdoms. Suppose if I talk about kingdom Animalia, that means I am going to have group of animals over here. So Animalia is a taxa. Chordata, what is chordata? Write it in the chat box and tell me. Mammalia, I have already told you. Mammals are nothing but who have mammary gland and fur or hair on the skin, right? Chordata is nothing but who have vertebrate, right? So these all are the example of taxa. Now, what is taxonomy? We have already seen taxonomy is nothing but arrangement based on the norms. So, taxonomy came from the Greek word taxis, which means arrangement. Norm means rules. So, taxonomy is the branch of science that deals with law of arrangement of grouping of organism into correct taxonomic category. Classification is nothing but class, grouping of organism into convenient category by some observable character, right? What is taxonomy? Arranging the organism of group of organism into correct taxonomic category. So in which category I have to place? Suppose I have organism 1, organism 2, organism 3. Out of these 7 categories, in which category I am supposed to place organism 1, which category I have to place organism 2, or which category I should place in organism 3. These all things we do it by taxonomy, right? So taxonomy is science of classifying organism or study of classification. Who is the father of taxonomy? Very important, Carl Linnaeus. Who is the founder of taxonomy? Aristotle. Now, what does it involve? What does taxonomy involve? That we see in upcoming slide. For time being, you can hold this point, right? This system reflects the presumed natural relationship. See, how do we do this grouping class? I told you, all these 7 categories are interlinked with each other. So, obviously, the organisms which you are going to put under these categories, these are also going to be interlinked with each other. So, they show natural relationship. Now, what is the basis of taxonomy? How do we do it? Classification is based on certain specific characteristics of the organism. What do we see? How do we do the classification? We are going to see external or internal structure, then we see the cell structure, we see the developmental process, and then we see the ecological information, that how the organism is related with the ecology, how embryo development occur, what is the structure of cell, does it have nuclear memory or not, does it have cell wall or not, how is the cell organelles functioning. All these things we are going to see, and as well as the external and internal structure. Now, this is very important. What are the pillars or process of taxonomy? So if in the exam it is asked that what is the process of taxonomy, you have to write all these 4 pillars. What are the 4 pillars? Characterization, identification, nomenclature and classification. You have to learn this in sequence wise manner. In subtextbook, nomenclature is written at the 4th point and classification is written in the 3rd point. It's all right, you can follow in that way, but always first and second is going to be characterization. Without characterization you cannot do taxonomy. So what is characterization? Characterization is nothing but you find the character of the organism. When I say character of the organism, morphologically you see, or anatomically you see what all things are present in that particular organism. Then you identify. For example, one example I have taken, warm-blooded animal. Now, who will have warm-blooded animal? Either your bird will have or your mammal will have. But while seeing the structure, you can see if the feather is not present, obviously if it looks like a mammal, if it has a mammary gland, and if it has hair on the body, you will categorize it as a mammal, right? So you identified, okay, warm-blooded, it's about the mammal, not about the bird. Then you gave name to the species. For example, if the mammal I'm talking about is human, I gave the name Homo sapien. Then we do classification of the organism. That means we put it into the particular category, right? Organism is classified based on resemblance to the different taxa. How it is? I told you that all the taxa means 7 categories I'm saying. All the taxas are interlinked with each other. If not resembling, if suppose I gave you an organism number 1, you found all the character, identification, nomenclature, everything you did it, right? But it is not resembling with the present taxa. So what you are going to do? You are going to form new taxa for that organism. That means new category you are going to form for that particular organism. Am I clear? Now, tools for the classification. You have two tools for the classification. One is zoo and the second one is museum. Zoo means already we know that we are going to deal with the wild animals. And why do we have zoo? We have zoo so that we can, protect animal in an environment under human care. This we call it as ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation we'll see in the biodiversity. It enables learning about we study about the animal. We read that ethology. Ethology is nothing but study of the animal behavior. What do we study in that behavior? We see their external feature, their food habit, their habitat, their behavior, everything we are going to study in the ethology. Help systematize organisms and the position them in a animal world. So all how animals are being categorized, if we don't know about the animal, obviously we won't be able to classify the animal. So it is important for us to understand about the animals. Here in the picture you can see different types of animals. Now the second one is your museum. Museum is nothing but we are going to preserve specimen. For example, one example is given in your textbook, that is insect. How do you preserve insect? You are going to kill the insect, you are going to kill insect, and then you are going to pin it and you are going to put it in the insect box, right? When I talk about the birds and mammals, in your textbook they have given that you are going to put stuff inside. See, after that obviously the decomposition process takes place, right? So if the decomposition takes place, that means the structure of the animal won't be maintained. To maintain the structure of animal, what do? They put stuff inside so that proper structure is maintained. Other way is that you are going to put specimen in a preservative liquid. So we are possibly you must have seen in your biology lab that you have specimen in some liquid. That liquid we call it as formalin or formaldehyde. This is going to preserve your specimen for the longer time. Obviously you are going to see skeleton in the museums, right? So that's all we have in today's class. Thank you so much.